Excited for you to join us today with the second time I get to speak to the incredible Katie Welch about another beautiful novel, Ladder to Heaven from Wolsak and Wynn. It really is beyond thrilling to be able to sit down with you, Katie. Thanks so much for coming. Before we get started, I'm going to share a land acknowledgement, and Katie's going to tell us what she's reading right now, which is a perfect way. We were just talking about this before everyone joined us. A perfect analog way for me to pick up some new reads. Why did I scroll up? Okay, so we open with a land acknowledgement as a reminder that we exist here in a country called Canada because of the colonial actions of the settlers who came before us. Reconciliation requires more than this acknowledgement. We must consistently and mindfully recognize our colonial history and accept the responsibility to care for the land, its resources, and all the people who were here before us. Colonialism, occupation, and genocide should not be an acceptable part of our collective histories. Junction Reads exists in what is currently called Toronto, on the treaty land of the Mississaugas of the Credit. It includes the sorry, with that. It includes the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Katie joins us from Kamloops on the unceded land of the Secwepemc. We recognize the continued displacement and colonization of First Nations peoples across Turtle Island, and we are very grateful to work in the community on their territory. Katie Welch. So my question is, what are you reading right now? And Kaylee, take note.
Hello, Allison. Thank you so much for having me again here on Junction Reads. I really appreciate being here and being able to talk to you about Ladder to Heaven. And I have just read some cracking good books, actually. I read Heart the Lover by Lily King, partly because I'd heard so many good things about it, and sometimes that's too much hype. It is a fabulous love story about that first love of your life that you never forget, no matter what else happens in your life. And I haven't been teary in a love story in maybe ever. I'm not sure. But anyway, Heart the Lover is beautifully written and I highly recommend. Another one is Antoine Wilson's Mouth to Mouth, a Canadian writer. And it sort of was bubbled along. I think it was longlisted for the Giller maybe last year or something like that. The biggest shock I've had in a book in a long time. I shut the book and went, what? And so I'm rereading that.
Nice.
And then this is the only one I physically have because I read a lot of ebooks too, but I also love physical books. What I Know About You by Eric Shakur. This is in
Nice.
translation, set partially in Egypt and partly in Canada. And this is a beautiful, beautiful book. Can't say enough good things about it, and I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, I'm reading this.
Nice. That's awesome. Kaylee will put the recommendations in the chat, but I love that. Thank you so much. So I'm excited to hear you read, excited to hear what section of Ladder to Heaven you're going to share with us. But before I do, I'm going to share your biography with everybody. Katie Welch spent her childhood in Ottawa, college years at the University of Toronto, and now makes her home in Kamloops, BC, while also building a home on Cortes Island. Her first novel, Mad Honey, came out in 2022 with Wolsak and Wynn. Short stories have appeared in Event Magazine, Prairie Fire, the Antigonish Review, the Thames Review, the Quarantine Review, and she has been shortlisted by the CBC Short Story Contest, first runner-up in the UBCO's 2019 short story contest, and her story, Poisoned Apple, was chosen as Pick of the Week by Longform Fiction. A passionate outdoors person, Katie extends that love of nature and the environment to her writing, including in her latest novel, Ladder to Heaven. Katie, the floor is yours.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I believe I will begin by reading a section that I haven't read before for any other reading. This book is unusual in that animals are able to speak telepathically to humans. And when I read those sections, when the animals speak, I do this so you know it's an animal speaking. But also, it doesn't give away what's happening with the people. But I'm going to open with a section from the Juan de Fuca plate, the tectonic plate, which causes the earthquake, which is central to Ladder to Heaven. So I'm just going to jump right in with the Juan de Fuca tectonic plate speaking directly. Meanwhile, the Juan de Fuca plate, relieved of pressure at last, spread out underground, luxuriating in plentiful space. It felt great. Subduction had been a compromise. Locked in combat with the great North American slab, the plates had been like rams, butting horns for dominance. But the outcome had been inevitable, and Juan de Fuca had gone down in defeat, as it had for eons, for all terrestrial history. Post-subduction had disadvantages. Juan de Fuca missed the soothing lap of waves caressing its 800-kilometer length and various brightnesses of sun-warmed water, and the tickle of spiny-shelled creatures on its topside. And yet, expanding below the dominant ridge, closer to the liquid-hot magma center of the Earth, Juan de Fuca remembered its humble geothermal beginnings. The plate was warm and comfortable under the continent, almost too warm. Juan de Fuca was toasty. In fact, along its eastern rim, the tectonic plate was literally melting, returning to its origins. A bubbling inferno of fiery rock was reclaiming what had once been lava and would be lava again. It was only a matter of time. Subduction meant the end of its existence, and there was no going back. The great trembling pressure of the centuries-long contest Juan de Fuca had endured and enjoyed was in the past. Earthquake. I woke beside a heap of charred wood and a pot that smelled of the sea. Mist had evaporated and the day strobed yellow bright. Shielding my eyes with my good hand, I scanned the water. The sea lions were stretched on their rock in weirdly seductive poses. The smaller ones' dark fur gleamed. The larger ones' homely hide blended in. I stashed my clothes and swam out. The plastic bottle had returned and mocked me like a childish insult. I clambered ashore, gripping neck threads in my teeth, and hurled the bottle as hard as I could. It landed close to the crevice. Story, said the larger sea lion, scrutinizing me with black disc eyes. I claimed my spot from the previous day. Caught in my eyelashes, water droplets refracted sunlight to make a lattice of rainbows, a heavenly confessional. Which one are you, Tish or Tosh? Tosh, she's my sister, Tish. Do you guys remember the big wave? The big wave brought us your dead, said Tish. My story starts with the earthquake that made the big wave. How much would the sea lions understand? I hope they wouldn't ask too many questions. Tell your story and then you will die. I'm not going to die right away. Maybe when the weather gets cold. You said you're dying. Sea lions, it turned out, were pedantic and bloodthirsty. Technically, they were dying too. Sooner or later, every living thing would revert to stardust. I lived over there, I pointed east, on the other side of those mountains. It happened at night. Most people were asleep. I felt nothing. February 17th, 2:36 in the morning. 12 kilometers west of Victoria and 27 kilometers below sea level, the Juan de Fuca tectonic plate broke free of its centuries-old sticking place. 400 kilometers to the east, sheep baaed nervously in a barn. Math and Duchess rolled their eyes and stamped in distress. Manx, sleeping on the carpet in Cleo's room beside the baseboard heater, woke up and padded to the kitchen. Alerted to the barn animal's fear, he barked, and I got up to see what was wrong. I pressed my nose to the frosty glass at the back door. The night was still, the snow moonlit. Manx whined. I let him out and went back to bed. Radio reports assembled a timeline. Events had unfolded in slow motion. In Alaska to the north and Alberta to the east, seismic instruments sensed and recorded the earthquake. Halfway across the continent in Saskatchewan, sensitive insomniacs felt abruptly and inexplicably nauseated. Japan's early detection equipment jiggled, and the country braced for a tsunami. On the Pacific coast of North America, buildings collapsed. Thousands of people died in the first few minutes, the air crushed from their lungs. Bridges twisted, broke, and toppled. Survivors said they thought the shaking would never end. Falling glass and debris struck cars. In the midst of this chaos and confusion, a tsunami crashed ashore, a wall of water 7 stories high. The waves slapped down, surged inland, then washed away everything in its wake. I slept. Midwinter stars pricked the sky. At 6:15, Prax's cell phone alarm sounded. Desperate to stop the harsh buzzing, I groped my end table, clatter of plastic pill bottles, clink of water glasses, thump of book falling to the floor. Prax silenced his alarm. Morning. I was still high from Percocet and temazepam I'd taken in the night. My head fell sideways. Prax, his face bathed in cold blue light, looked at his phone. I sank into wrinkled pillows, comforted by soft blankets and the invisible padding of drugs. I drifted back to sleep. The mattress heaved and shook me awake. Holy shit, there was an earthquake last night. Call your parents. Prax reached over and shoved my shoulder. Wake up and call your folks. He looked like a hologram. My husband was a 3-dimensional image of himself, like Princess Leia projected by R2-D2, genuflecting in a white robe, delivering an earnest message. It was funny, but my smile quickly faded. The morning had an unsettling pall. Prax usually surfaced slowly and scrolled through the news for a quarter of an hour. It was strange to see him sitting bolt upright, jaw set, frown creases sectioning his face into thirds. A ripple of consternation penetrated my woolly insulation. Never mind, I'll do it. Prax stabbed his phone with an index finger, nostrils flaring. What did you say? My lips tapped together strangely. My mouth felt externally controlled, like a nutcracker doll. Damn it, they're not answering. Went straight to voicemail. And who is that? For fuck's sake, give me your phone. Maybe they're not answering because the call's coming from me. Come on, wake up. There was an earthquake on the coast, 9.3. Says here there's no power or cell service in the lower mainland. And I'll stop there for now.
Oh my gosh. That is so incredible. I mean, I'm sure everyone can feel that opening the novel and reading and just like I think the when I started it, I had to put it down and I was like, damn, what? I have to put this novel down. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was fantastic.
Oh, my
Um,
pleasure.
it sparked a couple of different questions that I had prepared in advance, but and I thought about going not in order, but I'm just going to go in order. So my first question is a writerly question because the whole time I was reading this, I thought, and I quite often open stuff up on the internet and look things up, and I thought, how challenging is it as a writer to live in an area that is so vulnerable that had, I don't know how many earthquakes last year, just in 2025 alone, um, that's so vulnerable to the environment, not just earthquakes, but fires and everything that's happening in BC right now. And to create a novel that's still so beautiful and not mad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, listen, everybody reading this book right now, we're in danger. So I want to talk to you about that as a writer living there on that land and creating this really beautiful love story.
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I'm so glad that you got out of it that I do love British Columbia because I came out here from Ontario as a tree planter in my late teens, and I did fall in love with British Columbia entirely. And I saw many corners of it, and I do love it a lot. So, yeah, it surprised me quite a great deal when I read Catherine Schultz's 2015 Pulitzer Prize winning piece, the really big one in the New
Mhm.
Yorker, about the Cascadia subduction zone, the giant earthquake that we are expecting here in the Pacific Northwest. And the part that made me the angriest about that was the fact that we should have known about it. There were lots of geographic clues, and there were lots of clues from the First Nation populations who had drawn and painted and told stories about earthquakes. But the settlers in this area were completely oblivious to it. And so there wasn't a lot of earthquake protection built into the buildings. There's a nuclear reactor in upper upstate Washington.
Yeah.
That it may be decommissioned now. I'm not sure, but I mean, it just made me absolutely flabbergasted me that there had been nothing done. I mean, there's a lot more awareness now. I think maybe in part sparked by that, the really big one. It's just an incredible article, and I could not get it out of my mind. Mm-hmm. And I think it was thinking about that earthquake that got me thinking about, okay, what would it look like then? Yeah. What will this province look like afterwards? And I'm also an environmentalist, and I've been an environmental activist. I've been arrested a couple of times, and a lot of things, I do get mad about things, but they're environmental things. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't think an earthquake would be the worst. I mean, it's terrible that people would lose their lives. Yeah. I know that. But at the same time, I thought, shake us back to the Stone Age then, and let's start again. Mm-hmm. So there was that aspect of the book that it wouldn't be an entirely bad thing to have cars and roads taken out of the picture for a while, to have people start growing food locally, connecting with their communities.
Yeah,
trying to
figure out how to live outside of the capitalistic regime, which is
exactly
in control of us now. I love you mentioned the drawings. For anyone who doesn't have the book in front of them, these are beautiful, by the way, and you did them. But just in talking about Indigenous peoples' warnings and drawing things out, it really did make a difference for me. I don't know why, because I have a sort of conceptual knowledge of Vancouver Island, the islands in between and the strait and everything, but having the drawings at the beginning grounded me somehow in the land more than if they weren't there, which was so strange as a reader when I was like halfway through. I think anytime one of the islands is mentioned, or where Dell is going is mentioned, or where they end up at the end is mentioned, I'm like circling back to the drawing to look at where I am, and it somehow kind of grounded me in the land. And I wanted to talk to you about the reason you chose to include the drawings, and if that's the impact you hoped it would have, or what you were hoping readers would take from that.
Okay, I'm having a hard time not doing a jump up and down little thrill to hear you say that you referred to them.
Yeah.
That was my hope, is that anyone who wasn't familiar with British Columbia might not be familiar with the Coquihalla Highway or the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and would definitely need, if it were me reading about any other part of the world, that specifically, I would need a map, or I would like maps to be more grounded.
Yeah.
So there was that part of it. And also, I'm a giant book nerd from way back. And I mean, The Lord of the Rings, I went back and forth. Any book with a map, I am absolutely thrilled. So I'm not an artist at all, but I thought, well, I will try to create some sort of visual representation of what it is going on in my head as far as the journey goes. There are no people in those maps, so that was a fun part of it too. I wanted to centralize the animals in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Well, I like drawing maps with little animals in them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was awesome. And then, so structurally, the novel is the Dell's story, and everything we learn about how Dell ends up where she ends up, and where in the months between her on the rocks naked at the beginning and the day of the earthquake, is told via her telling Tish and Tosh, or her telling Cheng, a character who joins the novel, the story, about halfway through. And how did that come to you as a writer? The idea that you weren't going to kind of third person just tell this story you were gonna tell it in this way. And the
Well,
talking animals.
the
So,
structure is pretty traditional. I realized that I was going to write a quest. And once I did that, I thought, what if I use the Odyssey as the
oh,
structure?
yeah,
So it starts at
yeah,
midpoint of the story, and then it moves to until the story's rejoined till she's finished telling the beginning part of the story, at which point the stories merge and it moves on from there.
nice.
So I borrowed that, and in fact, there is there's a few other nods to the Odyssey, like Isaac is blind. There's
Right. Yeah.
the Tiresias, yeah. So there's a couple of little nods to that. It's extraordinarily loose, but that's where that idea came from.
Right. And talking to animals and that.
The talking to animals was really more of an environmental decision because I feel like we don't. There's all kinds of speech and all kinds of things attributed to our pets, to the
Yeah.
animals that are domestic. I mean, to the point they're wearing clothes now. I don't know. They have cars. What is going on with pets? I don't get it. But I mean, if we attribute all these things to a dog, why wouldn't the other wild animals also have these things attributed to them? Like, I
Hmm.
don't think we're listening to them anywhere near as much as they're communicating.
For
And
sure.
what is listening anyway? Like,
Yeah.
are we listening when a whale gets caught in a net, or when it gets struck by a boat,
Hmm.
or when there's mass die off of pinnipeds on the coast? Like, that's all communication too. So yeah, I felt like I will give animals a voice in this.
Yeah. And I love the two choices, specifically sea lions, because I don't know if it's personal or if it is like a generally agreed upon um image of them as these like beautifully connected animals, like their eyes and their whiskers when they move. Like just the choice of the sea lions, I thought was also perfect. Did you know from the start that they were going to be sea lions, Tish and Tosh?
Yes, it was always sea lions that I imagined, and that is partly because I don't want my the home that my husband and I are building on Cortez to sound too grandiose. We literally bought a small piece of land and are trying to YouTube it, and it's not done.
Right.
I mean, we live in a tent trailer, we haul water. Like, it's been an incredible journey being on Cortez. But one of the things that happened when we started hanging out there, which was a pandemic thing,
Hmm.
was a lot of kayaking. And the sea lions will follow the kayak. People call them the dogs of the sea. They're very curious, and
Hmm.
they will look directly at you. Unlike
Yeah.
a deer will look directly at you, but there's fear. To me,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm inventing all of this. I have an overactive
Yeah.
imagination. That's why I'm a writer.
The deers haven't told you that they're afraid, but they
No, but
see them. Yeah.
they have and they haven't. I mean, they look like they're trying to say, "I'm terrified. Please go away."
Yeah.
Whereas sea lions and seals look like they're interested,
Yeah.
like they're curious about why you're there, and they
True.
don't actually seem they do seem a little bit frightening. Especially sea lions are quite a bit bigger than seals.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
smelly.
I love that. And I love too, I mean, it's so um I can't think if this is a spoiler about where it is, but her dog Manx and just the thought of her alone with her dog and the conversations they might have had, I don't, it was just really nice. I like that. So there's a couple of big themes, I think. Motherhood is explored in this, and for me, I couldn't really describe it, but to me, so Dell's mom, and I've written this down because these are the words that I finally came up with. So Dell's mom, Helen, doesn't know how to manage Dell. Dell, in turn, doesn't know how to help Cleo, her daughter, who's very much like her. And for me, it was that space between knowing how to love and not knowing how to love that contained so much grief because it wasn't the not wanting to love, not, like it was just not knowing that I felt like all of the pain that Dell and a little bit towards the end, Helen, I kind of imagined was feeling a little um like she could fix things, fix mistakes that were made, maybe. So I want to talk to you about motherhood in the novel and how important it was for you to explore the love in that, even though it's so hard.
Well, that's beautifully put. Thank you. So I had recently gotten divorced when I started this book. This is not autobiographical. Dell is not me. But at the same time, I did have a lot of guilt about my daughters were blindsided
Hmm.
and they were, understandably upset. And I did a lot of thinking about how we do our very best with our children, but we're going to make mistakes. Mothers and fathers, parents are going to make mistakes. And when we do, we can unintentionally rattle the foundation of our children.
Hmm.
And so that was running through my mind all the time. And that precept that if you want to stop worrying about something, just imagine the worst possible scenario, and
Right.
then you'll feel better. So Dell was pretty much the worst possible scenario for me. I thought, okay, but what if
Yeah.
I stayed addicted and I took off and I left them with people who were actually terrible in terrible situations,
Yes. Oh my
and I
God.
let all of that play out. But Dell did it for me in
Yeah.
action.
Oh, that's amazing. And that, talking about mental health and addiction, that must have been also such a complicated thing to not just write out, but the honesty of it. Dell is very much an addict, very much unaware of a lot of shit that's going on around her. And how I don't know if I want to use the word cathartic or anything like that, but how was it living with Dell for all that time?
Well, I hadn't just recently gotten divorced, I also got sober.
Yeah.
So this is another worst case scenario. I was lucky. There's a great community here, and I had a recovery community and people who called me and checked up on me and helped me out with this. But what if there weren't anyone?
Hmm.
And I just was white knuckling it myself. Maybe not even able to get, for me it was alcohol, for her it was pills, but not able to get whatever. It doesn't matter, your substance, your thing.
Hmm.
Um, and you're just trying to get through that
Yeah.
yourself. And the journey is to self-love, right, and to caring for other people. And Chung is such a big part of that. When
Yes.
she meets Chung, and there's somebody who has had his problems too with substances, but has figured out a way forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I love him as a character too. And Isaac and yes, everything that happens without saying anything about what happens. And love is everything is is so powerful as we get like to the last quarter of the novel. It's fantastic. Um, okay. That's it. I have one more question. And I feel like because it's only 6:30, I'm going to ask my question. And then I'm wondering if you wouldn't, if you have prepared, if you feel like reading another like 5, 10 minute excerpt for us.
Yes, I do
Um,
have one, and I know the other one was short, so I'm happy to read again.
Okay, perfect. Also, everyone knows I'm obsessed with short stories, and I apologize in advance for just always making it about short stories. But Katie has written some incredible short stories and award-winning short stories. And so I want to ask you, is there a short story collection? Are you going to ever write a short story collection?
It's drafted, it's put together. I'm trying to get it out there. Yeah, it's almost ready.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I
I
love
mean,
that.
it's just been sort of back burner because I've been working on novels. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to get a short story collection out there. And I didn't come, just another word about short stories. I want to shout out to the Banff Center because I went there in 2016 as an emerging writers intensive. And at that point, I had decided I was a novelist and I was going to write novels. I had novels planned out. And the person who was my mentor there said, have you tried, do you work on short stories? And I said, no, I'm a novelist. And she said, why wouldn't you? I just don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you work? It's like a novel in miniature. It's great practice. It's like you can put them out there. Like, I just don't understand what your resistance is. And I really was just being stubborn.
Yeah.
about short stories. I hadn't even tried them, and she said, "I think that you should really give take your hand to short stories and give them a try." And so I was a convert at that point
Hmm.
to the shorts. I still find them harder than novels.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
guess.
they have to be perfect, like a jewel.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Um, I'm excited again to hear what you're going to share with us from the novel. And then
Well,
if anyone has any questions for Kaylee, you can throw them in the chat and we'll get to them after Katie shares this short reading.
okay, I'm going to read from. Actually, this novel began with a short story called Huck and the Cougar that was published in the Thames Review, and it grew from there. Dell undergoes a lot of calamities, and she withdraws to her dad's old fishing camp in the bush, um, and she lives there alone for 3 years. So I'm going to read a section from there. It was November when the cougar came. I knew from a calendar carved in smooth silver birch. Squatting outside the shack, using a tree trunk for balance, ankles shackled by tatty long underwear, I gazed at Orion's belt. Satellites in orbit cluttered constellations, like static on a screen. Cold air chilled my exposed skin, urine streamed into a tuft of moss, and a sultry voice spoke. We are patient, seeking only that which is provided. In a thicket along the creek, two bright green oblongs, cat's eyes. I had come across cougar scat and feline paw prints pressed deep in lakeshore muck. I sometimes heard the animal in heat, yowling to be mounted, a ghastly sound like murder. When I snared a rabbit or caught a fish, I left bones and guts as gifts, in case the cat might spare a feeding hand. A ridiculous practice, I realized, as the cougar emerged from shadow, white feline muzzle and tawny sinew backlit by a gibbous moon hanging over treetops. Bladder still partway full, my urethra tightened in fear. I bounced on my heels, shaking errant drops to the ground, and stood up slowly, sliding decrepit underwear to my waist. My plaid jacket was unbuttoned. I tugged it across my breasts and met the cougar's blank eyes with a thrill. We are hungry, the cougar said. Lifting a casual paw, it licked between claws. What do you mean? That which you provided and now do not. We seek it. I've been sick. I haven't been hunting. We seek it, the cougar repeated. I wondered why the cougar said we. Was it female? Did she have a litter nearby? Tense seconds passed. An owl hooted, and the cougar swung back toward the creek. In the morning, I set 6 small snares. An afternoon trapline check produced a scraggy rabbit, body still warm, foam from death throes lining strangled chops. I butchered and skinned the emaciated creature, keeping only a small portion of flank, leaving the rest for the uppity cougar. Stumping back into camp, I spied a flicker of brown fur in the vegetable garden. I squinted through deer fencing and saw a whole and healthy rabbit feasting on tough kale. Sensing trouble, the rabbit rose to its haunches and spoke in a squeaky, plaintive timbre. Killer hag, yek tuk tuk. Hating, you taking. I'm going to read one more animal section, just skipping ahead here. This animal is the moose. And here, Dell has decided to travel overland to the coast. So she's gone by foot over a mountain pass. Geese honked and skimmed treetops. Wind blew dust devils on the empty highway, mini tornadoes that spun out in ditches. The road angled up westward from the junction, rock littered and fissured with frost heave. I hauled the pack to my shoulders and hiked a steep ascent. Uniform evergreen spires stretched from horizon to horizon. A person could die up here. The prospect was comforting, but I wanted the truth, and Henry had answers. I gained elevation until snow skiffs flanked the road and gusts blasted conifers. I thought about the stolen pictures. If only I'd discovered them sooner, remembered the good times, and returned to my children. In the afternoon, I rounded a long bend and halted where the highway ended in a slew of boulders. I had reached the landslide, and the road was buried under rubble. As far as I could see, chunks of gray rock spiked with tree splinters. A white sky spat needles of wet snow. I sheltered in the trees and built a bivouac. I hiked scrubby spruce for 3 days, using a compass to maintain a westerly course and keeping the slide in sight. At night, I shivered in makeshift shelters and melted snow. I hurried down deer trails, clambered over fallen logs, and thrashed through shrubs. I ate moldy bread with shriveled berries and edible roots. On day 4, I reached the summit and began the descent. Water dried up below the snow line, and thirst became an obsession. Parched, I leaned against a tree. Give up, I thought. I was sitting in bunch grass, waiting to die, when a branch snapped. A cow moose stepped into a shaft of sunlight and swung her long caramel brown muzzle toward me. Nostrils dilating, she took my measure. Water, I said, tongue cleaving to the roof of my mouth. The moose didn't answer, so I pictured a burbling stream and projected the image to her mind. Water, the moose said. She plunged into the trees. I stumbled after the big animal, sometimes losing sight of her brown coat and locating her by the sound of weighty hooves smashing undergrowth. I felt faint. The pursuit dragged on until black spots danced in my vision. At last, the cow moose splashed into a mucky creek, lowered her thick, muscular neck, and drank deeply. I fell to my knees and slurped brown liquid. When I came up for air, she was watching me with enormous, fathomless eyes. Go away and never return. I need to camp here tonight, I said. No more humans, no more, go away. She charged me with astonishing speed and acceleration. Branches snapped and water splashed as she plowed through brackish brush. I had no energy to escape, and I covered my head with my arms, waiting to be struck. But she stopped, shy of trampling me. And wet muzzle twitching, she spoke in pictures. Furious flashes transmitted like viewfinder slides. Clear cut. Plastic clogged stream. Oil slick puddle. Dead moose calf. Get out and never return. She waded into a dogwood thicket and disappeared. Hands shaking, I filled drinking bottles with brown water and stuffed them in my pack. Night fell. A waxing moon lit the landscape. I walked west until smoke betrayed a settlement. Merritt, or what was left of it.
I just dream that I would be like Dell if anything ever happened. Like she's just so capable, so inside of herself in some of those moments. But Kevin's asking a question here. I wonder if Katie could tell us a bit about the choices of personalities for the various animals.
Sure. I mean, a lot of it was total imagination. I am lucky enough to. I came out as a tree planter to British Columbia, so I've been lucky enough to run into animals. I mean, basically all the ones that are in this book in the wild, and you just get a feeling. I don't know. It seemed to me that a moose would be moose. I've been trying to see a moose at our local cross country ski hill
Yeah.
for 10 years, and I can't ever see the thing. It doesn't like they don't want to see you. They'd rather not. They need their space. So I just thought, what would a moose say if a moose could see me? Pretty much would say, I don't want to see you.
Yeah, get the hell out of here.
And the same process with the others. I mean, the domestic animals like people. So the
Mhm.
horses are quite lovely. They don't mind people. They like being brushed and ridden and taken care of and fed.
Yeah.
And the dogs, Max is very loyal. Max is lovely company,
Hmm.
as one
And
would hope.
and Tish and Tosh are those curious swimming up to the kayak types.
Yeah, and I
They
got
want the
called out on
story.
this by a book club, so I'll just confess, not a cat person. My mother had a weird relationship with cats, so if somebody
Shh, Kaylee. Don't listen, Kaylee. Shh.
Not all cats are created equal, but a lovely. We've met cats like Marsh, I hope.
Yes. Kaylee has a cute cat. Their cat's really, really cute.
I'm sure your cat's lovely, Kalia.
Yeah. I couldn't see if there are any other questions. I don't think so. No.
Sorry, it's always a rush to like add and then unmute myself. There's a question from David, which is the natural world seems to always play into your writing. It's so obvious in this book, but also in some of your previous writing. Do your surroundings influence your writing, or do you find that you can draw on that inspiration from wherever you are?
That's a great question. I think I can draw on that inspiration from wherever I am. And when I'm actually physically writing, I'm in a building. But I've spent, I mean, I love the natural world. So that's just what comes out of me when I want to write. I don't
Hmm.
have, urban stories don't inspire me the way that the natural world does.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's just what I want to explore
Yeah.
as a writer.
Which is so important because I feel like we've come to this place in the world right now where real life is seemingly more like fiction, more unbelievable than ever, and fiction has become what we need to take in, what we need to consume in order to remind ourselves that we are human beings on this planet with other human beings, and we need to start getting more real with each other, getting more real with ourselves. Um, Katie, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I loved reading and I loved being on Junction Reads. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad that we got two readings. Like in a weird way, as you were reading, I thought, why don't we do this more often? This is really good. Thank you. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are I've the next February and March are a little weird. I'm doing a lot of virtual conversations with authors, Mackenzie Nolan, um, in January, and then February and March, a bunch of people. Damian Tarnopolsky is hosting on my behalf the in-person event on February 1st, and he'll be hosting Ben Lattiser, Sadiqa Demeyer, and Robert Huff. And I think we're back online in March, maybe. But anyway, thank you again, Katie, and best of luck with this book.
Thank you so much, Allison.
It
Thank you for having
deserves
me. Thank you,
everything.
Kaylee.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.